It's time to explore the world according to Glenn. I'm Kevin Jacobsen. Glenn Close is my favorite actress, and this show is all about exploring the career of one of the finest actors of her generation. Each episode, I'll be joined by a guest as we dive into one of Glenn's movies, TV shows, or stage productions, going chronologically through her career, discussing her performance, and assessing the project itself. And today, it's time to talk Glenn's Oscar nominated performance in The Wife.
Time nominee Glenn Close, motherfuckers.
My guest today, I am always delighted to podcast with, so much so that I truly can't stop having him on. You heard him discussing immediate family with me on this show, as well as Evening, writer of his blog, The Awards Connection, and contributing writer at Awards Watch. Welcome back, the kingmaker himself, Andrew Carden.
At last, we discuss a good Glenn Close film.
Yes. Good. Like, we're trending more positive.
Yes. A great Glenn performance. And I would still say a better film.
Certainly.
Not saying much, but...
a film that kind of exists more than your previous two.
True.
Wouldn't you say?
True.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, we've all been waiting for it. But before we talk about Glenn and the Wife... You told me on the first episode about your relationship to Glenn Close, of course, and you gave me your casting idea for a future Glenn role, which I love that you gave me two answers for that. One was just specifically an adaptation of the play 33 Variations, which is great, but also your idea for her to play this legendary actress at a retirement home, kind of a murder mystery type of thing.
Yes.
I love that. I hope you've been working on the screenplay.
I have the title now, at least.
Oh my God.
So the title will be The Final Curtain, and the tagline will be "There's no business like dead business." So I've gotten that far.
Well, whenever you need me to contribute any money to this, let me know, because I'm very on board. But
Will do.
Yes. Now I'll ask you an alternative question, which is really up your alley, I would say, which is if you could recast Glenn in any Oscar-nominated Best Actress role, what would it be and why?
Okay, so I did one per decade, and I promise I won't take too long on this. We'll go through it.
Okay.
The 20s, Sadie Thompson. We got to get Glenn in a Gloria Swanson role, and I don't want to be lazy and do Sunset Boulevard, so we'll do a different one for the 50s. I think a younger Glenn and Sadie Thompson would have been terrific. A lot of fun. The 30s, I went with Dark Victory for the 30s because I'd love to have seen her in one of the great Bette Davis roles. It could have been The Letter. It could have been something else. It could have been The Star. But I really like that role. Yes. But I think her in Dark Victory would be terrific. For the 40s, I went with Mrs. Parkington, the obvious choice.
Is it?
Just for the pure camp.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'd love to see her in a Greer Garson vehicle.
Would be fascinating.
Yes.
I would be more intrigued by that, personally.
For the 50s, I went with Suddenly Last Summer, specifically the Katharine Hepburn role.
Of course.
Because I want to see her go down that elevator.
Yep.
For the 60s, I went with, the subject was Roses, which is a film and a play I really, really like. And I think she'd be just heartbreaking in that role. A little old right now, but I think a little younger would have been sensational in that.
Yeah, good call.
70s, I went with Interiors because, I mean, Geraldine Page is perfect. Like, nobody could top that performance, but I just picture Glenn in that role and just, wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I know.
Kind of surprising that she and Woody Allen's paths never crossed at all over the years. I feel like he would have cast her in one of his like shittier movies in the 2000s or something.
Knowing her luck, she
Maybe,
would be in one of his shittier movies. Yeah.
yeah, like she would have been in like anything else, the Jason Biggs movie in like the
Jesus.
Stockard Channing role, like something like that.
Wow. Yeah.
Thankfully, that
Well,
never came to fruition.
yes. Jesus.
The 80s, now this is just so
Her sweet
perfect.
spot. Yeah.
Victor Victoria.
Oh,
Incredible.
my. Wow.
I
The
mean,
jazz hot. Would love
yeah,
to see it.
amazing.
She loves to gender bend. So,
Yeah, just as amazing. 90s, 6 degrees of separation. Like,
speaking of Stockard. Yeah.
oh my God.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's the one.
yeah. 2000s, I went with The Contender,
Ah.
which feels like it's right in Glenn's wheelhouse. Maybe not a huge stretch,
Yeah.
but I would have loved to have seen that.
Mm-hmm.
2010s, I think 45 years she would have been devastating in.
Yes. Wow.
And last but certainly not least, and I think you can guess where I'm going with this one. 2020s, it's got to be Naiad.
Of course. We famously did talk about it on the show on one of the episodes about how it easily could have been in the 2000s, her and Judy Davis
Oh,
in
sure,
Naiad,
sure.
serving
Yeah.
in silence realness. Yes. Love
Yes,
it.
yes. So, yeah, so many great options there. I really think Victor Victoria that would be amazing to see.
That would have
A little,
been,
again, a little
yeah.
older right now,
Yeah,
but I just
of
imagine
course.
her doing it in like the 90s with Nathan Lane in the
Mhm.
Robert Preston role, like
Wow.
gold.
I wish I could have had that.
I know.
And you've introduced that, and now I'm upset that I can't have it.
Hey, I imagine she'll be back to Broadway at some point. I can't imagine
Yeah,
she won't be. Will
definitely.
she be in a musical? I don't know
Mm,
about that, but she hasn't been in a while. So I feel like that's long overdue. So
yes.
maybe they'll do the Victor Victoria revival.
Hmm. Love it. I mean, speaking of which, one of my answers for this question, if someone were to ask me this, would be doubt.
Sure.
Which I think, if they just did another revival of that, I know they just did it with Amy Ryan a few
Mm,
years ago, but,
yeah,
that seems right up her alley. So,
would love to see it.
yeah.
And her daughter could play the Amy
Oh,
Adams role.
yeah. That's cute. I love that. Now I'm just casting all of them. Are we doing like a John Malkovich, just totally reunite
Oh,
them?
sure.
Well, anyway, it's time, indeed, to talk
Yes.
about the wife. It's really the moment we've all been waiting for since I started this show, I would argue.
Mm, yeah.
Probably same thing goes for the Best Actress series. It's always leading up to the wife, no matter what I do. So, all right. The Wife started out as a novel of the same name by Meg Wolitzer, which was published in 2003. And then about a decade later, in 2014, it was announced that Glenn would be starring in an adaptation of the novel with the Swedish director Bjorn Runge attached to direct. He was relatively unknown in the US prior to The Wife, and then Jane Anderson attached to write the adaptation. So Jane Anderson, famous for writing How to Make an American Quilt and for writing and directing the prize winner of Defiance, Ohio. She was an Emmy winner for writing The Positively True Adventures of the Alleged Texas Cheerleader Murdering Mom, and had just won an Emmy in 2015 for writing the miniseries Olive Kitteridge. So, pretty strong pedigree there. But yes, Glenn was attached in the early 2010s. She said she met the author Meg Wolitzer backstage when Glenn was performing in the play A Delicate Balance, which was on Broadway in 2014. Glenn said, "One of my co-stars had set up a little lending library. She was a voracious reader, and on the shelf of that lending library was The Wife, and I think I read it then. At that time, I didn't hear about a movie version. That was later when my agents got the script, and even though I couldn't answer all the questions about her, Joan, that is, I was intrigued enough to say, yeah, I'll put my name in that and see what happens." And the rest is history. So, also worth noting that while Glenn was always on board from the start, the cast did change pretty significantly from early announcements. We had actors like Frances McDormand, Logan Lerman, and Britt Marling in the mix, and actually announced as cast members in 2015, but all of them were replaced by Elizabeth McGovern, Max Irons, Jeremy Irons' son, who Glenn also just worked with on Crooked House, and Glenn's daughter, Annie Stark. replacing all of those roles. So Jonathan Pryce was attached in 2015 to play Glenn's husband in the film, and Christian Slater to play a nosy journalist. So The Wife is set primarily in 1992 and tells the story of Joan Castleman, played by Glenn, an older woman whose husband Joe, Jonathan Pryce, is a successful novelist of many decades. After they get a call that Joe is going to be honored with the Nobel Prize for Literature, they fly out to Stockholm to accept the award, and Joan starts to question some of her decisions in life along the way. And when Nathaniel Bone, Christian Slater, a biographer, starts to probe into Joan and Joe's history, it sets Joan off as we learn the truth behind Joe's success as a novelist through flashbacks and through present-day discussions and arguments, leading to an explosive confrontation. All right, Andrew, The Wife. Here we are. What are your thoughts then and now on The Wife and this big kind of comeback moment, you could say, for Glenn and her performance?
Well, I was so pumped for this because it had pretty strong notices out of TIFF. And it took a while, if I recall correctly, for it to actually get a US theatrical release. I think it was about a year
A full
that it
year.
took.
Yep.
So I was so pumped. I mean, and I obviously have always adored Glenn, perhaps not as much as you. That's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
And
But you're pretty close.
I think that Sony Pictures Classics picking it up really instilled a lot of confidence that this was going to be a winner for her, and potentially her first truly great leading role in ages. I mean, yeah, she had Albert Nobbs a few years earlier, but that wasn't necessarily the most satisfying of adaptations. So
Sure.
I was so excited for it. I saw it when it first opened in Boston, and I had very mixed feelings because I enjoyed it and I loved her performance, but I came away from it thinking, you know what? I don't think she's going to win the Oscar for this. I think it's a little small. I think her performance is too subtle. It doesn't really get that energy going until quite late in the film. And I just don't think, I'm not even convinced this is necessarily going to be an instant Oscar nomination. This could just be her getting some critics' notices, maybe a SAG nomination, and that's it.
AARP.
So, yeah. So when things later came to fruition, I was honestly surprised, obviously pleasantly surprised, but I was surprised because it just didn't strike me as the Oscar-winning Glenn vehicle. So I think I've seen it a total of 4 times now. I've even watched it on a plane back in the day.
Perfect plane
And
movie.
I love Glenn just as much each time. It's a performance full of subtleties and nuances and has such power. I think it is one of her finest hours. I think she would have been a marvelous winner. The film itself, I increasingly have issues with more and more each time. I think this is a film I probably would have given, honestly, like a 4 or 4.5 on my first watch. And now I'm more toward the like 3.5 range. Because I really do think that she and Jonathan Pryce, who's also brilliant, they're carrying this thing on their shoulders. I don't think this is one of Jane Anderson's finest scripts. I think the direction is a really mixed bag. And I think, with the exception of one scene, I think all the flashbacks in this are atrocious. So we'll get into it. We'll get into the
Yeah.
specifics, but adore Glenn. But I think the film is so flawed. And in hindsight, it isn't the least bit surprising to me that she didn't win the Oscar.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I agree with a lot of what you're saying there. And yeah, this is one that, as a longtime fan of Glenn's and hearing the buzz out of Toronto, where it premiered in 2017, seeing the trailers for it, I was very hyped to see her, especially in a leading role like this again, which she hadn't really done all that much since Albert Nobbs and Damages 6 or 7 years prior. Like, yes, she had things like The Wild Wedding, where she was kind of a lead, but like most of the movies she made in the 2010s weren't exactly setting the world on fire, you know? So to have this moment where it felt like, you know, a movie was tapping into her full potential as an actress was very exciting. And I remember there being a trailer that hyped her as, I don't know if you remember this, but it said 6-time Oscar nominee Glenn Close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which felt like very strategic marketing, I would say. And I was like, oh, wow, this could be like a really exciting narrative. Like, this could be her moment. So I did end up seeing this in theaters as well. And I was so entranced with her performance and really felt the journey of this woman who is at times kind of a difficult nut to crack and someone who keeps her cards close to the chest, but also really empathizing with her and the idea of like having regrets over how you've lived your life. It's tough. It's really tough to sort of grapple with the idea of not feeling like your own person, of feeling overshadowed and overlooked for so long and wanting to sort of blame the way things are in society for that, but also maybe feeling a bit of guilt of your own for like giving in to that too, and combining that with loving your husband and feeling like, you never could imagine life without him, but feeling frustrated and like stifled at the same time. It's kind of like this huge mix of emotions that is asked of Glenn. And I do think she fully understands who this woman is, just down to the marrow. Like, she understands the idea of the whole thwarted ambition thing and sexism that she's explored. And of course, things like Fatal Attraction, Dangerous Liaisons, and even Sunset Boulevard. There was kind of that feeling she taps into of being passed over, or like being in the shadow, but rarely having that moment in the sun, that I find very poignant and very potent in her performance, and also having a bit of a meta element as well of Glenn herself and how she has been passed over at the Oscars and such. There's a lot going on here, I think. But, I think for a lot of the film, it's really this masterclass in subtlety and internalized acting, and is really like this simmering pot for so much of it. And she keeps feeling more and more humiliation and the feeling that something is just wrong here and she can't take it anymore. And just the heat on the stove is just like gradually turning up to the point that she just can't help but boil over eventually. And I think you're totally with her, even in the moments where she's not physically interacting with others in the scene. You can still feel this kind of connection to her and the audience, really, just in how like a facial expression changes, how her face falls when Joe says something kind of careless, or her just looking not very present in a scene because her mind is elsewhere. I think it's all a remarkable kind of trick that she pulls off of putting us in her mind as she's experiencing these things. So all of that is just independent of like the film itself, just what she is doing. I think despite all of the awards that she did end up getting for it and the praise she got, I still find it to be kind of underrated, ultimately, of a performance that people don't give enough credit to.
Yeah. And I think it's a performance that was so discussed at the time. And I feel like after Oscar night and all the emotions we had with that, it's not a film that's really discussed at all today. It's not a film that's ever
Yeah.
on television. It's seemingly not streaming anywhere.
Yeah.
I actually had to watch it on the Oscar screener that I had from back in the day that I dug up
Oh my God.
from
Love
Sony
it.
Pictures Classics.
I have the
Um,
Blu-ray for what it's worth, because
nice.
I have to.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of performance that folks like us so appreciate. It's just
Hmm.
so subtle. There's a lot of Glenn Close eye rolling in this, where she doesn't actually do the eye roll. It's all so internalized, but you know exactly what she's thinking.
Oh
But I
yeah,
just could picture people at the time watching this and expecting this explosive, dangerous liaisons level performance. And instead, for the first, 45 minutes or the first half or so, she's very quiet. She's not saying a ton. It's seemingly more of a two-hander between she and Jonathan Pryce, who's in the beginning giving kind of the livelier performance. So I can imagine a lot of folks being kind of taken aback by this, perhaps even a little bit bored by it. And again, those flashback scenes, which we'll inevitably discuss, just don't help things and
yeah,
kind of just take you out of it. You want to spend the whole time with Glenn, and instead it's going back and forth and just not in a compelling and effective fashion. And I should also note, if I recall correctly, this was, I think, the only real contender that Sony Pictures Classics had that year.
yeah.
So it was like all Glenn. They were going all in on her, which made me feel all the more confident going into seeing it that this would
Of
be
course.
something big. And yeah, and I was just, I loved it, but I was also just a little scared of what lied ahead for her award season wise.
Hmm. Yes, more on that later.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think the film itself is certainly not as strong as she is. I think there are certain directorial choices that prevent it from reaching that full potential that you might want from it. Yeah, and I think the the choice to do the flashbacks to Joan and Joe in the 50s at the college and their life after that just doesn't really add up to much in the end, I would say. Those scenes just feel very, I would say, artificial to me.
Hmm.
Almost like there's just something about the way they're even filmed too that it feels like they're like this imagined fiction of sorts that like they would have written together. I don't know. It's just very strange, which is
They
not.
actually reminds me a little bit of some of the flashbacks from Evening,
Oh
which also
no.
were very artificial and not well
Yeah.
acted. And I
Yeah.
mean, we'll discuss it more, but I don't think Annie Stark is the most compelling actress. And nor do I think Harry Lloyd is anywhere on the same level as Jonathan Pryce. And I think most of the bad dialogue in this film exists within those scenes.
Yeah, it's just such an odd tonal shift, I think, from the rest of the movie that doesn't really fit. I think Annie Stark is fine. Like, she's not actively bad, but it's just, again, not adding as much. It is cute that her daughter is playing her younger version, but it doesn't really get there for me, nor does Harry Lloyd as the younger Joe. Like, I understand wanting to break things up a bit and not have this be too dialogue heavy, I guess, but I do think, like, there's a certain power in having the past in this case just be talked about rather than us having to physically see it, because I think it would even create more of an air of mystery about, and like even an ambiguity about just how Joan kind of perceives her past. I know it would be difficult because she's so tight-lipped as a character, but I think there are easy ways to do it just through like private conversations between her and Joe in the present, maybe. I don't know. I think that would just add more intrigue and give them even more to do, Glenn and Jonathan, in being able to fully lead the film rather than give up all that screen time to their younger selves.
Hmm.
I also think, for as invested as I am in the film through her performance, that the writing in general does leave a bit to be desired, since just a lot of the drama, I think, is kind of standard domestic drama material of a woman feeling unseen and her husband questioning her and being a blowhard and a serial flirt and like a cheater, but it doesn't always have the depth to really go further with that and like really delve into things that could be very specific to their relationship, such as like the specifics of the writing process even, and like how her having a voice but not really getting to own it as like a public voice kind of informed how she felt about all this. I think a lot of that is sort of suggested through her performance, but it isn't really properly tackled in the film itself, you
Hmm.
know?
And Jane Anderson's could be a terrific writer. I mean, I think Olive
Yeah.
Kitteridge is
I
wonderful all
love Olive
around.
Kitteridge. Yeah.
And such a not only a great vehicle for McDormand, but the whole ensemble in that is terrific. The writing is
Mm-hmm.
so sharp. It's wonderful. And here, and perhaps it's the book, maybe,
Yeah.
but it just isn't as sharp. And you just, the whole thing is Glenn and Jonathan just having to lift it at every turn, and they do, and they make it very compelling. But when they're not on screen, or when Max Irons is spearheading a scene, or when Christian Slater is, or the flashbacks,
Yeah.
it can be rough.
Yeah, it can. So, just to go through the film sort of sequentially, I do just want to note once again, it is 1992 in Connecticut when this takes place. I was just
Hmm.
2 years old. But yeah, I always forget this is a period piece. I don't know about you, but like
Mm.
it always
Oh
just kind
yeah.
of throws me off a little bit. Like, oh, we're in
Yeah.
the early 90s. I'm
Hmm.
just kind of curious. I guess it just makes sense with like her being at college in the 50s that
Hmm.
her worldview would be shaped by her experiences there. But it always kind of throws me off because there's not really any other indicators really that it needs to be in the 90s.
Right.
Just saying.
It feels very present day to me.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, I do feel that you can kind of tell right away in the body language and in the way they speak to each other, like what the nature of this relationship is, because it's just like him being irresponsible and like eating sugar before bed. And
Hmm.
she's lying there kind of scolding him about it a little, saying he shouldn't do that. He's kind of this sort of casual, almost sloppy guy at times, whereas she has this kind of like cat like sphinx type of feeling to her. Like he's like this shaggy dog kind of thing, and she's like this very feline creature. That's just kind of what I get from the beginning even.
Hmm.
And it's probably not an accident that like his attempt at role playing in bed with her in the beginning kind of falls flat
Mm,
because she can't help but kind of laugh at his lack of creativity,
yeah.
which is like a great sort of thesis statement for the film ultimately. So that's something I picked up on this watch in
Yeah.
particular. I'm like, I kind of see what we're doing here.
And then she's like, "Oh, fine, go ahead.
Yes.
Let's do
Yeah,
it."
her kind of just rolling over and sort of letting it happen is again relevant to the story, I would argue.
Yeah, and I should say they have a great rapport. I mean, I think that Glenn and Jonathan, just looking back, thinking about all of the leading men that she's had over the years, I think this
Yeah.
is top tier for sure. They ring so true as a couple. They have a great
Mm-hmm.
rapport. There's little subtleties throughout the whole film, like when she's checking his beard for crumbs at the house party early on. Just really subtle and completely believable notes that I love.
Yeah, and I do always love when the Nobel Prize associate guy calls them and Joan goes over to listen on the other phone. And there's just this mix of emotions that kind of wash over her as he's explaining that Joe's won the Nobel Prize in literature, and she's kind of shocked, but also kind of like bewildered and elated, and but she's not really smiling per se, which is a key choice. It's sort of like, wow, this is a big moment, and maybe I kind of knew this day might come, but I don't feel entirely contented by this a little bit, and maybe isn't able to put her finger on exactly how she feels. And we see in the subsequent moments like them jumping on the bed
Hmm.
or at the big celebration party or whatever, like she's putting up a brave face, but you can tell something's kind of nagging at her, but
Yeah.
it's not so obvious either that she's like letting anything overtly slip, so it's not like a hammy kind of situation type of thing.
Yeah, it's a very, very bittersweet feeling for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I do love them jumping up on the bed and
Yes.
saying, "I won the Nobel," and he's like, "La la 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 la."
Yes, which I guess is their
Uh,
thing, as we see in flashbacks.
yes,
They love to jump on the bed together. Love
yes.
that they still do it in their older age. But yeah, but there's like this cleverness and an intelligence that Glenn naturally has that makes you feel like, yeah, she's definitely the smarter of the two of them. And just watching them in like that party, like I actually also thought briefly of the idea of like, what if there was someone like a Jeremy Irons in the Joe role, only because Max Irons is playing their son, and that
Mm,
would have been fun to see them reunite. But also, I very quickly like put that out of my mind because he does not have the right energy for someone who is a clear inferior to Glenn. you know?
too suave. I think it is the right
Yes,
move to have somebody kind of sloppy and unkempt, and I
exactly.
think Jonathan's perfect for that. I could see Gary Oldman in
Yeah,
this role,
which she
but
wanted. She
yeah.
reached out to him to have him potentially do it.
Yeah, but I'm glad it was Jonathan because he really needed a role like this. And I was a little surprised, to be honest, that he didn't get any traction come award
Yeah.
season because he's terrific in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think perhaps this performance helped lead to his nomination for the Two Popes the very next year.
Yes, I think so.
But I just love, though, and this is something you really notice on subsequent watches of the film, how she often only lets it show how bothered she is when others aren't looking. Like I said before, like she may even be sharing a space with other characters, but when they're not directly looking at her, there's just this lingering sort of tension that she shows on her face that I think is really effective. Like
Hmm.
on the plane when Joe is like flirting openly with this flight attendant
Mm.
or bantering with the Christian Slater character who's there, just the way she like peers over her glasses is so
Mm.
funny. Almost like this dry humor. Like she's kind of just like patiently listening in a way and like observing how Joe behaves and is maybe filing it away for later, perhaps for future arguments. But it's like she's so used to shrinking herself down in a way that like wives of great men feel they have to do or are
Mhm.
forced to do. I'd say she even makes certain lines work that are very on the nose, like when she sort of chides Joe for being rude to this biographer, and she's like, "There's nothing more dangerous than a writer whose feelings have been hurt." You
Ugh.
know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
She does somehow sell it though.
yeah,
Yeah.
but very obvious foreshadowing. But it's interesting how quick with a line she has with that, like as if that's something that is kind of fresh of mind. Is
Hmm.
like you don't want to piss off a writer in a sense because it's like she's right at the surface even
Yeah.
in those early parts.
Well, even when the film is kind of focused on Joe, it's
Hmm.
also like the camera will still be fixated on Glenn's face, on Joan's face. So
Right.
when Price is giving the toast at the party, the camera is really focused on Glenn and what her reaction to it. It's not on him. So I love that. And I love Glenn's eye rolling on the plane as he's flirting, and she just wants to do
Right.
her crossword, like stop bothering her with this. And it's
Yeah.
something, she has had to deal with this constantly, probably on like a weekly basis with his flirting and his shenanigans. So she's just so exhausted by it and just wants to, do her own thing. And again, there's just such subtleties in her performance that I love.
Yeah, you definitely feel the history between them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, just all the little details of Joan attending to him and like making sure he takes his medicine at the right time or trying to make sure he wipes his mouth at a party. Yeah, it's sort of like she's attending to a child, really, and like
Hmm.
making sure he behaves himself and is taking all his medicine. But at the same time, I think it's sort of like it's almost this pride thing too of like the sense that like his wins are her wins too and that
Hmm.
they are truly are a team, and every time that he gets praise or like some woman at a party says she's read all his books and loves them, that they're really complimenting her, and like that's something that she can have for herself even if not like the public glory. Like she can have that at least and kind of hold on to that. And Glenn being such a great subtle internal actress in these moments really comes into play here of being like,
Hmm.
well, at least I have this.
Yeah. And I love her face just as he's like cracking lame jokes and
Yeah.
hobnobbing with everyone. And of course when he says, "My wife doesn't write, thank God."
Oof.
And she keeps it in. She lets it loose later,
Oh
but
yes.
in the moment, very restrained. And definitely
Mm-hmm.
not the first time she's had to deal with this.
Exactly. That's
Oh.
what I mean. You feel that history of them having those same conversations at parties and him saying these things.
Mm.
Yeah, that part of it I think is well drawn, but I think a lot of that is just in their performances and their chemistry more than the film itself, I would argue.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back again to the flashbacks, I don't want to dwell too much on them, but they are a significant part of the film. A lot of very clunky expositional stuff to set up how this younger version of Joan got to know Joe as her professor, who really loved her writing. And she also has this encounter with this visiting author, played by Elizabeth McGovern, who was an alumni at her college, who basically told Glenn, like, hey, I heard like you were a writer. Well, don't bother because you're never going to get the attention of all the men in the publishing industry or whatever avenue you want to go down with your writing. Just like don't bother. It's
Yeah.
very blunt and to the point. And I'm not saying these conversations weren't had in, especially at a time like 1958, but to me, a lot of this is very clunky and surface level and yeah, just kind of unnecessary in the end.
Yeah, that was the one scene that I did like from the flashbacks was McGovern's because I think she's
Mm-hmm.
quite good and rings true as that character. And I love her opening the book as it kind of creaks open and she says, that's the sound of
Oh
a
yeah.
book that's never been opened.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that note. But
Sure.
otherwise, it's rough. And the line that Annie Stark has to deliver to the baby that she's falling in love with her daddy, or his, I don't know if she just
Yeah.
says, "I'm falling in love with your daddy."
Yeah.
And that I cringed at that in theaters and I forgot about that. And when it was about to happen, I was like, oh no, I know what she's gonna say. And oh, I just hate
Yeah.
that. And she can't deliver it well.
Mm.
But there's a lot of lines like that that just are kind of stilted and, as you said, artificial that just don't ring true in the flashbacks. And the look of it just feels very fake too, just like a lot of dress up.
Yes. Right. Yeah. But it does reveal, even in flashbacks, just how much of an insecure kind of baby that Joe has always been. Like, even when she gives him pushback and criticism a bit about the first novel he's written, The Walnut, and you're kind of like, now, what exactly does she see in this man exactly? Like, I don't know. I wish there was
Uh,
a bit more exploration in the flashbacks about, like, his good features that would make him want to stay with him for so long and to lie for him for so long. It's like
mm,
there's a little bit in the beginning with how they connect when she's just a college student, but For me, I just kind of watch, even in flashbacks, and I'm like, he just seems like a schmuck more than anything.
Yeah.
Like, what
Yeah.
exactly is the appeal here?
He's not like a brilliant philanderer. He's just like a kind of
No.
mediocre guy.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And he does like I think Jonathan Pryce just kind of exudes a certain intelligence.
Yes.
But I don't think that's quite there in the flashbacks. You would think that he'd be portrayed as this really intelligent guy, but yeah, I mean, she's doing all of the heavy lifting. So yeah, I just don't think they're effective. And again, anytime it goes to the flashbacks, I just cannot wait for it to fast forward back to the present.
Yeah, very that,
Um,
unfortunately. Because, like, I could have gotten a lot of this just from, like, for example, the scene that she shares with Christian Slater's character when they're having, like, a coffee and a cigarette or whatever. And he interviews her about her time at the college and how he knows she was a writer and well regarded for her work. And it's kind of like this little chess match between them where it's like they both know there's like a game going on here, but neither of them is overtly saying it. Like she knows he wants these little nuggets of bitterness, as she says, about
mm,
their relationship. And like he knows that she's very clever and won't be overly open to him. And I just love this sort of air of amusement she has as he keeps trying to get more info out of her until
yeah.
she ultimately is like, I don't trust you, But it's these very suspicious, kind of amused looks at Christian Slater in that scene that is so reminiscent of what she does in Fatal Attraction with like Michael Douglas in the restaurant at the
Oh
beginning, where
yeah.
she kind of has that like downturned face and that
Mm.
stare. It's great.
Yeah.
I love
I don't
that.
love Christian Slater in this. I didn't when I first saw it, but I do love that scene because
Yeah.
she's smoking that it's like a sweet cigarette that she hasn't had in so long, and
Right.
she finally looks relaxed. She's not on edge. Yeah, I really like that. And yeah, and he just keeps pressing her and talking about how, he thinks that Joan Castleman is sick and tired of Joe Castleman. And then you see her kind of walking the streets after their meeting, and she's visibly shaken, like she's really been rattled. So
Yeah.
that's a big turning point.
Right. And that's what ultimately gets us back to that hotel. And they have her and Joe have their first huge fight when he kind of chides her for smelling like smoke and drinking and feeling like she abandoned him. Like it's very childish and possessive and ultimately deeply ironic when she then uncovers like that he has this walnut in his coat with a little love note on it addressed to the young photographer woman, which is basically like his move
Hmm.
when he's flirting with people, as Joe knows very well because he's did it to her. And I feel like she's almost insulted that like he is so sloppy and uninspired after all these years of her just him just like flirting with this other woman, and she blows up at him. But
Hmm.
this is the first time we see the rage that's kind of boiling inside of her, and I do think it's just electric to watch her finally unleash.
Hmm.
And yes, it's sort of conveniently interrupted ultimately by this call that they get from back home that their daughter has had this baby, their first grandchild, which kind of calms them down and
Hmm.
reminds them of the life they built. But I do think that that scene is just a great little morsel of what we'll eventually get.
Yeah. Great foreshadowing. I love how she says that, she should have been a little later so she could finish fucking the photographer. I love
Oh
that
my God.
line.
Yes.
And then, yeah, the response to the call, and he says that, they have such a wonderful fucking life, I think is his line.
Yeah.
It's kind of jarring how they go from such rage to such joy in a matter of like less than 5 minutes. But there have definitely been moments just like this where they've, been at it and then there's a pause and they go back and forth. Just a lot of volatility.
Yes. But eventually it's time for more confrontations. Just to keep continuing on that with Max
Yeah.
Irons, David coming to the hotel room and causing a stir when he confronts them about the truth because Christian Slater's character has just straight up approached him at the bar with these direct accusations about Joan actually being the ghostwriter of Joe's books. And it really escalates to the point of him starting to get physical with his father. And it is fascinating in this scene trying to, like, how she tries to evade her son's direct questions and
Hmm.
just lying to him eventually and saying like, oh, well, Nathaniel is an insidious man and is stirring up lies and that it's not true. And even if David doesn't believe them, it's like, it's not up to me what you believe. It's the kind of thing, it's up to him. And there's just this tension in Glenn's face that I think is so beautifully done, because
Hmm.
I think the look on her face suggests that she wants to just tell him to finally be able to just breathe and not have to manage this sort of fiction in her head as she's done
Hmm.
for years, for decades.
Yeah.
But she can't. She physically can't bring herself to do it. It's once again great internal conflict work from Glenn.
And it's a scene like this that really shows Max Iron's limitations as an actor,
Yes.
just because
Yes,
he's so
sadly.
overshadowed and he doesn't sell the kind of clunky dialogue. Like he has a line
Mm.
about like how he's been worshiping at the wrong parental shrine, and it's really
Yeah.
stilted and he doesn't sell it. Yeah, I suppose it could be worse, but I think there's a reason why he hasn't done a ton of movies since this. But yeah, it's a great scene, her just having to calm him down and keep him from attacking his own father physically. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on just kind of how the film directorially doles out the information of her being the sort of ghostwriter this whole time of his work, him being kind of a sham, and her, like, all he really does is just kind of a little bit proofread what she has done and written it under his name? Any thoughts on how that's all kind of handled?
And that's the thing is when I first saw this, right from the get-go, I kind of saw where it was going.
Yeah.
And
Like, it tries
yeah,
to be a mystery, but it's all not really all that surprising.
yeah. I mean, I didn't even really read a lot of reviews about this. I just kind of, I knew the sense was this had a pretty solid reception out of Toronto. But I didn't read any spoilers or anything like that. But I would say within the first 10 minutes, I could see exactly where this thing was going. So yeah, I mean, it's just Glenn's performance is full of great subtlety. I don't think that Anderson's script is quite full of the same nuance. And
Certainly not.
it's a little obvious. So,
Yeah, that was my sense too. It's just trying to figure out if the film's intent was to make it like a true reveal moment, ultimately,
mm,
that that's what's happening, or if it's kind of just like, yeah, we kind of had a feeling about this the whole time. It's hard to tell what the movie kind of is trying
my
for.
sense is they were going for kind of a jaw dropper that we wouldn't see this coming, but
Yeah,
not successful on that end,
I
if
don't
that
think
was the
so.
point.
Yeah, but from there, I think she's just really firing on all cylinders in the kind of third act here. Like
Hmm.
when she's in the limo with Joe and he's assuring her, like, Joni, we're not bad people. And she's just mentally checked out,
Yeah.
you know? And when she's at the ceremony in the audience, she can't even look at the stage to watch her husband accept this award. It's like
Hmm.
her body cannot bring herself to even do that. And she is so close to that boiling point. And it continues when he's giving his speech. Of course, I love her line after that when someone at her table asks what she does. And she very proudly says, I am a kingmaker.
Love
Love
it.
it. Yes. I just love, again, that little prideful being like, you know what? I do have worth, and this is what
Yeah.
I do. I made him a king.
A very dangerous liaisons level delivery. Feels like something that
Yes,
could have been in
very much tapping into that.
that.
Yeah. But Joe ultimately does betray her request of being like, I don't want you to thank me in my speech. I don't want this sort of trite thing about how my wife is the real person behind all this. Like, she just doesn't want to hear it. But of course he does it, and it's a very cliche kind of like thanking the wife thing that feels very condescending, I would say, about how like, oh, she always keeps me in check, and how like she's my muse and my inspiration. And she like visibly starts to shake
Mm,
after a time, and I feel like you can just see her heart pounding in her chest almost.
yeah.
Like, how like that rage you get sometimes. I don't know about you, Andrew, but I don't know how rageful you can get. But like those moments where like something is just so wrong and so against your kind of code, and you feel like this hotness and this anger in your face almost. Like you can almost feel your pulse. Let's just say I've been there, and I really
Mm,
feel that from her in that scene.
oh
Like you
yeah.
just want to escape when she does.
Well, I mean, I kind of felt that way when she lost the Oscar for this, but
You and
yeah.
me both.
But yeah, I mean, it's just like her like version of a panic attack almost. Like she's
Yeah.
so beside herself, she doesn't know how to respond, so her body's just taking over, and she gets up and she leaves, but it's like she doesn't have all of her control, so she's bumping into the waiters
Yeah.
and going outside, and they're trying to get her coat, and it's just so chaotic. And then her filter
Hmm.
at this point is just gone in the limo with him.
Yes. I love it. Well, I mean, before that, I just wanted to note there's the scene where he tries to kind of kiss her
Hmm.
at the ceremony, or yeah, kiss her and hug her, and her just disgust at that. I really felt that. Like that
Mm,
was that was loaded, I think. But yeah,
yeah,
the scene in the limo is great where she's just like, I'm leaving you. And she
yeah.
kind of laughs at his sort of pathetic excuses and his very condescending way of saying, like, oh, well, the Nobel Prize belongs to you. And he hands it to her. And it's just like she's disgusted by every single thing he says,
Hmm.
you
Yeah, and
know?
she's
And
like, you
it,
shouldn't be surprised or shocked or heartbroken about any of this. Like, this has
yeah,
been kind of like a long time coming.
exactly. Yeah. And just this stupid choice he makes to throw it out the window. And she's just like, typical Joe, kind of is like her feeling. It's like being a baby, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, leads to that killer scene in the hotel room
Hmm.
where I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it now. Watching this again, I just got furious all over again that she didn't win the Oscar
I
because
know.
this for me is one of the scenes of her career. I know it's like very heightened and deeply like kind of yelling to the rafters, but she is just so locked in this moment where she just unloads on Joe all of the pain and humiliation that she's been through all these years of him taking credit and never even properly even giving her credit in private. And he's just accusing her of stealing from his life, and I think he calls her like a prissy little co-ed at one point. And the way that she just kind of hisses at him, shame on you, Joe.
Mhm.
Classic Glenn. You really
Yeah,
felt that.
and she talks about how she would forgive him after all of his affairs, and each time he would sob in her lap and beg for forgiveness. And you can just picture this.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's something that inevitably happens so many times, and she's just so sick of it. And then she picks out a book, and this was like the one that she wrote after he screwed their third nanny.
Hmm.
A lot of good book throwing in this scene,
Yes.
which I appreciate.
Yes. It's our equivalent of a plate throwing scene, really.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, you really feel, especially when she goes on to say, like, she can't take it anymore. How, like, you tell the gathering sycophants that your wife doesn't write. Your wife who just won the Nobel Prize. Like, you feel that theatrical training there, I think, in how she
Hmm.
projects in that scene. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
But it's so impactful, I think. And then just, again, his like pathetic little excuses and his way of basically blaming her for not leaving him if she was
Mm.
so unhappy is just so insidious, too. It's just like, he's so, I don't know, he's so predictable in the things
Hmm.
that he says that I
Yeah.
think that just frustrates her even more, is that like he can't even really keep up with her in a sense,
Um,
and she wants that. She wants a true equal. But
yeah. It's probably a top five Glenn scene in her career.
yeah, it really is. I think so too. But then he ultimately dies of a heart attack,
No.
which is another like, okay, for some reason, all of these arguments end with something very dramatic happening, either a birth or a death or, whatever it is. I will say the first time I watched it, this felt like a bit of a cop out, to be honest, because I feel like it kind of forces Joan to now just be like, okay, now I have to live my own life rather than
Right.
to like actively have to make that choice, which feels
Hmm.
like what we've been kind of leading up to.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I felt.
No,
But that's just part of
absolutely.
the original story. So,
And I kind of wish the fight went on a little bit longer, honestly, because
yeah.
it's kind of just abrupt, the heart attack. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, I suppose, it's believable that this would happen. I mean, it's been foreshadowing he eats shit and he's stressed and doesn't take
Yeah,
care of
not taking
himself.
his
So
meds. Yeah.
this was inevitable, but I do wish the scene could have been like at least 5 minutes longer.
Yeah. Just make
Um,
it a full marriage story, knockout, blowout kind of
I
thing,
know, I
you
know.
know?
Yeah, yeah.
But she ultimately does get control of the narrative in the end when she's on the plane back to the States, and Nathaniel is accosting her again, and she tells him, like, I know you're going to write that book about Joe, but as she says, if you malign Joe's talent in any way, I'll take you to court.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck, Nathaniel. I'm sure you'll write a fine book.
Was that her Oscar clip, if I recall? Or was there another
Uh,
scene?
I haven't watched it in a while.
Yeah.
Out of
It was definitely a scene
trauma.
on the plane,
But
and I was
yes,
like,
it was.
there could have been a better clip than this.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. But it's a great little whispered line there at the end from Glenn, where it felt like Patty Hughes really jumped out in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, I'll take you to court if you malign Joe. So, yeah, little morsels of Glenn's past roles in here that I enjoy. But, yeah, the film ultimately ends with her turning the page to write her own story, essentially, and we get this marvelous close-up of Glenn, only for Bjorn Runge, the director, to then cut to a wide shot of the plane flying through the sky for like 5-10 seconds, which makes no sense.
No.
Why does it end this way?
I hated it then. I hate it even more now. And it's clearly a CGI plane. Like,
Yes. Oh my God.
Pisses me off so much.
What was the reason?
I don't know. Maybe with a different director. I mean, yeah, because I mean, Jane Anderson is so talented. So my sense is more so to blame the direction of this. Had there been another filmmaker behind this, maybe this could have been more satisfying. But as it is, it's still a great Glenn vehicle.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Are there other details from The Wife that we didn't cover? Any little random observations?
Just there's one scene where there's like this candlelit ceremony for Jonathan Pryce in their bedroom, and Glenn's just like, no, and just like gets out of bed and has none of it.
Yes. I just love her sassy little reactions in these moments. She's a very funny woman. She's very witty. I would like to read like a book of essays from Joan Castleman about her little observations over the years,
Yes. Love Joan.
I'm picturing like a Joan Didion or a Fran Lebowitz type of thing. I don't know.
Totally.
But where do you think Joan goes from here? Does she chart her own path as a writer?
Oh, maybe she starts a podcast. Oh no, this is 1992, so no. God, what would she do in the mid 90s? Gosh. Yeah, maybe she'll write a play. Well, she'll definitely write a book or a play about all of this, or like a big tell-all. Yeah.
A big tell-all. I love it. Yes. She can go on Oprah. It can be a whole thing.
Wife's story.
Wow.
Joan's tale.
Joan's tale. Yes.
Joan's story of a woman. Like one of the like Susan Hayward kind of titles.
I love it. Yes. A real smash up. Yes.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. We need the sequel. We need The Wife too.
We do. Return of the Wife. Yeah. The Wife's Revenge.
Yes. That sounds like another thing you would write and end in murder, perhaps.
Maybe.
Maybe so. Maybe so. And end with her killing Christian Slater. Anyway. Yes.
Marsha Mason as her sister.
There it is. There's our Marsha Mason mention for the episode. Perfect. She would have fit right in here. She could have played Elizabeth McGovern's character.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's where we're ending on The Wife. Marsha Mason could have played Elizabeth McGovern's character.
It's fitting.
I think so. Yes. Okay. So let's talk about the release of The Wife. So it premiered at the 2017 Toronto International Film Festival, where it got very good reviews for Glenn's performance, and it was generally well received, mostly positive, but still an overall feeling that she's better than the movie around her. Sony Pictures Classics then acquired it and held it for a year, I think perhaps to speculate, kind of unofficially wanting to save her from having to compete in that year's very competitive Best Actress race, which was really shaping up at that time. That's just my sort of conjecture. But it was, released in the US in limited theaters on August 17th, 2018, which, as of this recording, is almost 8 years to the day at this point. Time flies, but it was released in only 4 theaters that first weekend, and it eventually kept expanding, peaking at 541 theaters on September 14th, 2018. It came in at number 14 that weekend, in the same range as films like BlacKkKlansman and Operation Finale. But it was a pretty decent hit, all things considered, grossing about 9 million domestic and another 9 million worldwide, making 18 million in total, which is more than double its budget. So, pretty good. I will talk further about the awards part of this in a bit because I feel that requires its own section. But do you have any thoughts on why the film kind of did pretty well with critics and at the box office, given what some might say is a rather limited appeal for this kind of like small-scale domestic drama?
Well, I can't speak for elsewhere, but it played in Boston for a long time. Like it was in theaters well into like January, February, if I recall correctly. Maybe playing just like 1 or 2 times a day, but there were definitely, all like the matinee ladies,
Yes.
would go.
Blue hairs.
I remember when I went, it was my kind of crowd.
Hell
But it was around for a while, and yeah, I mean, it kind of brings to mind a lot of, older releases from Sony Pictures Classics and other small studios that would just kind of keep chugging along. You never have like a ton of screens, but would be in theaters for a while with a nice per screen average and end up with like 10 million in the end. So yeah, and the reviews for the film weren't amazing, but very high on Glenn. And yeah, I mean, I was very, very impressed by it when I first saw it in theaters. I saw it on a big screen. But still, I came away with it still a little, not so sure about her chances. Almost to the point where I thought maybe she could even be snubbed altogether for a nomination.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this was propelled by her performance and also Sony Pictures Classics knowing how to target their older demographic, And I think there is such a fondness, I would argue, for Glenn Close among older moviegoers that they kind of came out to see it just to watch her be great and lead a movie again, because it had been quite a while. And I think even at that time in like August, September, there was already Oscar buzz, which I think really helped a bit of being like, okay, let's see what could be her kind of Oscar ticket, perhaps,
Yeah,
So,
I don't know if we want to get into the Oscar stuff yet, but I did, just out of curiosity, I went back and I dug up my predictions from June of that
oh my.
year for Best
Okay, let's hear
Actress.
'em.
So before The Wife hit theaters. Number one, Saoirse Ronan for Mary Queen of Scots.
Okay.
Yep. Viola Davis for Widows. She
Uh,
got, a little
yeah.
traction. Then
Yep.
Glenn. Then Kiki Lane for If Beale Street Could Talk, which never
Ugh,
really panned out at all. And
yeah.
rounding out the top five, Felicity Jones for On the Basis of Sex.
Wow. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of those make sense on paper, I would say, before people saw them.
Now, rounding out the top 10, just kind of looking into the top five, were Toni Collette for Hereditary, who, had a
Of
lot
course.
of buzz. Then Lady Gaga for A Star is Born.
Hmm.
Then Melissa McCarthy for Can You Ever Forgive Me? Followed by Emma Stone for The Favorite. Because at that point, I thought that Olivia Colman would go supporting. Kind of wish she
Yes.
did.
Yep.
And then 10th, I had Charlize Theron for Telly.
Hmm.
Great performance, but didn't really get much traction.
Wow. Yalitza Aparicio, not even on the radar.
Nope.
Fascinating. Or even like a Emily Blunt for Mary Poppins Returns.
Yeah, at that point in June, I just didn't see it.
Yeah. That is fascinating to see how things really do change. Indeed.
Yeah.
Poor Saoirse. Yeah. Anyway, I think on that note, we should definitely talk about what happened, to quote Hillary Clinton in her book.
Yeah.
What happened? So, okay. Well, this award season for Glenn was really a major undertaking for her, unlike any other award season she had gone through before, I would argue. Sony launched a big campaign for her. As you said, she was the priority and sent her all around the circuit, doing the Hollywood Reporter Roundtable. I believe she did Variety Actors on Actors. She won the Hollywood Film Award for Best Actress. Remember the Hollywood Film Awards?
Mm-hmm.
That totally real and legit organization.
Yeah.
But an early one. Getting nominated at the Gothams and various Critics Awards, winning a few Critics Awards, and the buzz kind of kept building from there. But from what I can recall, there wasn't a huge feeling that she could really win the Oscar until the Golden Globes,
Yeah,
where
which
she was,
changed everything.
yeah, nominated for Best Actress in a Drama against Lady Gaga in A Star is Born, who
Hmm.
was the overwhelming favorite to win that,
Yeah.
considering she is who she is, and in a movie with a huge amount of buzz that sort of crested around that time. But then Glenn won.
Hmm.
She won her first ever Golden Globe for a theatrical film and her third overall after The Lion in Winter and Damages. And she was
Yeah.
utterly gobsmacked to win. I always love her reaction to that. And delivered this gorgeous speech that I still watch to this day. I don't know about you,
Hmm.
but that
Yeah.
was a very overwhelming moment as a fan.
An all-time great speech, and really it just catapulted her into frontrunner status. And I think when that happened, so I think that the perception initially was Lady Gaga could be a Best Actress contender for the win. But then the buzz was more so, she's going to win Best Original Song. Does she really
Yeah.
need the acting prize too?
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, she and Glenn tied at Critics' Choice.
Yes.
Um, but even so, that still kept the momentum going for Glenn. And then obviously, SAG came along, which I think was generally expected, but still. And then she even won at Indie Spirits over Toni
Yep.
Collette, who I think a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people thought could maybe a dark horse there and maybe blunt her momentum a bit. But no, she just kept going with that beautiful dog on stage with her at Indie
Yes. Pip.
Spirits.
Mm-hmm.
But even at that point, I was nervous
Mm-hmm.
because the favorite had so much more buzz than the wife. I mean, leaps and bounds more. And then that BAFTA win happened for Coleman, and then I got really scared. So
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, like, you got so far ahead there. I was just
I
gonna
know,
say her
sorry.
speech, her Golden Globe speech. I just wanted to mention, first
Yeah.
of all, just like her speaking about like being in the industry for 45 years by that
Hmm.
point, and just how meaningful it was to win this, and how it like spoke to women reclaiming their power, and like got the whole audience on their feet. And like that's for me what really, even more than the win, kind of cemented things for her as like a real force, is just how much her speech really resonated with that audience, especially with women. So like that's really for me what kind of did it. And then yeah, the Critics' Choice win. I fully don't believe that that was a real tie. I'm just gonna put that out there. I don't
Yeah.
believe it, but it was still fun, and they look great winning together. And yeah, winning the SAG award is like, again, her first for a feature film,
Hmm.
and delivered another great speech. It really felt like, is she really on her way for this? Like, it's kind of incredible. And, she had won three of the major precursors, and her narrative was building as the overdue veteran. But then, to your point, things got a bit disrupted at BAFTA when Olivia Colman beat her. And Olivia had also won the other Best Actress Golden Globe, and so she kind of felt like she was now in the hunt there. But yeah, definitely a blow to Glenn's kind of securing her Oscar chances. I think this is something that people have talked about more in the 2020s. The idea that, like, if your film is not beloved by the just general awards consensus, you kind of need to sweep the awards in order to still win the Oscar. Because if there's an alternative in a film that people like more, they're more often than not perhaps going to do that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And the favorite had, I think, 10 nominations, which I think was the
Yeah.
most of a film that
Tied
year.
tied with Roma as the most of the, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And then keep in mind, you also had this influx of a lot of new voters, a lot of
Yeah.
international voters who may have been more keen on somebody like Coleman and didn't perhaps care as much about the Glenn overdue narrative. Had
Yeah.
this been a decade earlier, maybe the overdue narrative would have been enough for Glenn and she would have gone all the way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with a bigger pool of voters, it wasn't helpful. And I think we've learned that on top of that, BAFTA is just the more reliable precursor than SAG at this point. I mean, it's hard to deny that.
BAFTA is, you could say, the kingmaker.
You could.
So, yeah, but also, like, when you think about it, though, between the two of them, most people were favoring Glenn going into the Oscars, especially because Olivia wasn't as well known at that time. And
Hmm.
there had already been discussions of to your point earlier, whether or not she was actually the lead of the favorite,
Hmm.
to the point that her going lead was seen as a bit of a risk. And Glenn has and had so many friends in the industry that Glenn winning the Oscar felt like definitely not locked, but a relatively safe bet.
I think Glenn, if I recall correctly, also campaigned harder than Olivia did.
Oh
If I
yeah,
if I remember,
much harder.
Olivia didn't attend all of the precursor ceremonies. I don't remember if she
No,
attacked SAG and or
she was
Critics'
not at
Choice.
SAG.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Glenn was everywhere. And if I recall, I mean, there were some, not film festivals, but tributes to her that were happening in the industry just about her career with great
Yeah.
Q&As and all of
Santa
that.
Barbara, all those.
Yeah, I don't know if that was perhaps a turnoff for some folks who saw it as, oh, so we're going to do this coronation and it's all about her career. It's not about the performance. I mean, there may have been a little bit of sentiment like that.
Yeah.
And I think in hindsight, it would have been a little odd for the favorite to be shut out entirely,
Mm-hmm.
which would have been the case had Olivia not won. I mean, it would have gone 0 for 10, which would be a little crazy. I mean, there's just so many factors.
Yeah, the way she even showed up at the Oscars wearing the most elaborate 42-pound Carolina Herrera gold dress, ready to win. She's
Yeah.
meeting the moment. And, again, like by the time we get to the end of that ceremony, the favorite had lost every award it was nominated for, even things it might have been expected to win. And then suddenly, Sam Rockwell and Frances McDormand come out to announce Best Actress, and the Oscar goes to Olivia Colman, as Frances McDormand says, right into the
Oh,
mic. And then
yeah.
Glenn just, it hurts me to say it, but
Yeah.
I feel like you can tell this very human moment of disappointment,
Hmm.
which we see from her little square in the telecast. And Olivia does give a great speech, kind of like halfway apologizing to Glenn for winning over her and saying
Yeah.
how much she loves her and ultimately delivering a very endearing speech. But as a fan of Glenn's for so long, personally,
Oh.
this was a devastating moment. This was
Hmm.
like an innocence lost moment for me and the
Yeah.
Oscars. And I know that sounds dramatic, but like it really did kind of hurt to see my favorite actress in that position of being set up for so long as the front runner, and her admitting in interviews that it would mean a lot to her to get that
Hmm.
recognition from her peers, only for it to be snatched away at the last minute. It
Yeah.
really did kind of hurt, and I sort of vowed from that point on to not get too invested in Oscar races, because it really just kind of toys with your emotions, and you can really set yourself up for disappointment and kind of get lost in the weeds. So
I mean,
I would
after
love to.
after she lost, I had to kind of like calm myself down a bit, and I was like, if she's gonna be okay, she has all these Tony Awards, she has these Emmys, she has the Golden Globe, she has the SAG Award, she's gonna go home, she's gonna be fine. You should be
Yes,
fine. It was like having to
right.
like give myself some therapy. It was such a gut
Me
punch.
too. Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that initial moment for you watching it?
I mean, I gasped.
Yeah.
Um, it was truly I mean, my brother, I had friends text me because we were all because I mean I have like a little Oscar pool that I do with friends, and my brother texted me immediately because
Yeah.
he was pissed and he loves Glenn too. I mean, it was so startling. I mean, I felt the same way. I mean, I don't remember Lady Gaga's reaction. She was just like
Yeah.
I mean, all of the
Mm-hmm.
responses were, yeah, just crazy. And I felt the same way, I committed to never again letting myself get so emotionally involved or wrapped up in an award season like that. Like I didn't allow myself to get wrapped up in, and it's not really the same thing, but like Demi Moore's, and all of
Yeah.
that. And I wouldn't put Demi on the same level as Glenn. I'm not saying that, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a lot of people did. And I'm sure that
Oh.
they were
Oh yeah.
devastated when she lost to someone on, their first Oscar nomination after she had a really healthy precursor run and won at SAG. Um,
I felt a lot of that
so,
same shades of that with Demi Moore and Mikey Madison. I'll just say that.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, us and these veteran actresses who don't have Oscars. I mean, if Annette is up again
I
and she
can't.
has a good run and she doesn't win, I
I can't.
mean, we just can't. Thankfully, like she never really had a chance for Naiad, but
Yeah.
had she won at places, and lost, and
Mm-hmm.
I really like her in Naiad. I know a lot of folks
Yeah.
don't, but I would have been devastated by that too. And there's also part of me that just like when these veteran actresses who are getting so few roles finally get that moment and they lose to
That's the
someone who's
thing.
so much younger and will have so many more opportunities, it does just piss me off. And I mean, I love Olivia Colman. I think she should have won for The Lost Daughter.
Hmm.
I think she's brilliant, but it really grinded my gears at the time.
Yeah. And I will say she did take it like a champ ultimately, and she's gone on to sort of embrace her status as like a perpetual bridesmaid with a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And she has a perspective. And I think for as meaningful as the moment would have been for her, I think it's definitely a case of, her fans wanting it more for her than she does herself. Like she obviously would have loved it, but she's lived a great life and has truly won so many awards, as you said,
Hmm.
and been feted so many times in her career for decades that I think it's really not the be all end all for her. But when I look at what happened here, like I can't help but feel that sort of queasy feeling that they rejected her in this moment in favor of something flashier. I get that the wife is not a great movie. We can agree on that.
Yeah.
But I just have that nagging feeling that's never really left me that Glenn was set up as the front runner and as the one to beat, and that there were enough voters who said, no, not good enough. I'm looking for
Hmm.
an alternative. And they found a very flashy alternative who is much more boisterous and loud and in your face. And that is
Hmm.
what was required of Olivia in that role. So I'm not knocking it or saying that in a pejorative way. But to me, it felt like a rejection and an overlooking of Glenn's brilliance in her movie.
Hmm.
And I can hear the criticism for that way of thinking too. Like, I get it. We do want voters to think independently and not just fall in line with what everyone else has done. But for me, I just think of how many actors we have who gave what I feel are inferior performances objectively that
Hmm.
just sail through and pick up every trophy and just get that Oscar in the end, no question. And I can't help but feel disappointment that this was one of the times that they rejected that frontrunner status and that sort of narrative. Because, like, of course, this is the time they decide to go a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we were just so built up. I mean, had she just been a nominee at these places and
Yes.
it was just
If it was just
like,
Albert Nobbs, I would have been fine, you know?
yeah, yeah. And we wouldn't, I mean, we were just, the expectations were set in a way where if it didn't happen, we were just going to shatter, which we did for a moment.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was devastating in a way I've never felt. I was admittedly like a little irked, and I mean, this is not on the same level. Like, I really thought that Stallone should have won the Oscar for Creed, honestly, in his
Mm-hmm.
category. And when he was lost, I was like, damn, that's a shame. This is probably his one opportunity. He's not going to be back. That would have been pretty
Yeah.
cool if he won. This was like 100 times that, obviously. Um,
Certainly.
but yeah, just like the bias against more subtle performances, the bias that I seem to encounter so often against actresses of a certain age.
Yeah.
All the
It's full
actresses,
ageism. I really think it's ageism.
yeah, yeah, and all the actresses we both love from back in the day who, got four more Oscar nominations and never won. In many cases, who never even got an honorary Oscar. I mean, and also just the industry's constant prioritizing and affection toward youth, over veterans, watching as a Fernanda Montenegro loses to a Gwyneth Paltrow, which Glenn, of
Yeah.
course, herself has commented on.
Yes. So
Um,
shady.
but
Shady
yeah,
Glenn.
I've committed to never letting myself get so wrapped up in it again
Yes.
because I was so pissed, just
Yeah.
heartbroken and mad when it
Mm-hmm.
happened. And again,
Yeah.
nothing against Olivia Colman. She rules. I love her. She's my favorite queen on the crown. But the funny
Yeah.
thing is that in hindsight, years out from it all, when I look at this category, I honestly think that the best performance in the lineup is Melissa McCarthy's, which I know is kind of a unusual take. And I would have voted for Glenn at the time, but if I'm looking now and just going back and choosing my personal winners, I'd probably go for Melissa.
Yeah. I think history will look very kindly upon Melissa McCarthy's performance in that movie. And I'm
Mm.
so desperate for her to get back to that kind of a role again.
Yeah, She's got to stop
because
doing these HBO Max movies directed by her husband, and
yes.
yeah. Uh,
But yeah, it's a great category overall.
mhm.
It ended up being, I think, even more competitive than we thought it might be in the beginning. But anyway, yeah, I still love the Oscars for what they are, and the whole thing of how they bring attention to art films and like the big achievements. But I feel like this is definitely a moment for me too, where getting too invested in this, never a good thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But one thing I think was a positive to come from all this is there was a huge amount of sympathy that I think came from this moment, and
Hmm.
an acknowledgement of Glenn as an actress just overall that hadn't been present in like the pop culture zeitgeist in
Hmm.
quite some time. And I think it's what led to her booking more roles in the 2020s moving forward, which we will soon be covering. And, we can say a lot of things about what I'm going to talk about next week, which is Hillbilly Elegy. But like that was like a prime role that she might not have gotten
Yeah,
if the wife hadn't come about. And so
100%.
she gets a lot of great, good stuff to do in the 2020s that I think is a result of this whole campaign, regardless
Yes.
of the outcome.
Yeah. Without the wife, we don't get her in Hillbilly Elegy, which means we don't get the butt.
Which is really some of her finest work in recent years is debut at the Oscars.
And hey, she looks like a blast in the Hunger Games. Maybe that's her Amy Madigan role. I
I mean,
mean,
I will tell you something. I'm literally reading that book right now,
yeah.
and she is just going to tear into that role like nobody's business. She is truly a repulsive character, and I cannot wait for her to just be as unlikable and nasty as possible. So,
Yeah, yeah. But I
can't
want her
wait
to
to
come
see
back
it.
to Broadway too, because she
That
hasn't been
too.
in so long.
I know. So, that's the wife.
What a journey.
It's quite a chapter in her
Uh,
career that is, I think, a turning point in good ways and in bad ways. I think,
yeah,
but
yeah.
ultimately, it is what I think in part leads to her this year getting an honorary Oscar, which I
Hmm.
would love to get your thoughts on. If you, I don't know if you've shared anything on Glenn getting her honorary finally.
I mean, it's very exciting. I mean, and I'm sure she'll give an incredible speech. And I hope that it's someone that she's worked with before, like a real veteran, like a Michael Douglas who presents it, or a Jeff Bridges, someone like that, or Jonathan
Jeremy
Pryce,
Irons.
even. I mean, or
Yeah,
all of them
Jonathan.
at once, like all of the
Yeah,
men,
all the men. Yes,
Glenn's men.
and Rose Byrne.
Yes. Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
Even Ted Danson could be there for damages too. That's
there
fine.
you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very happy for her. I do fear that perhaps it could dampen her odds of winning a competitive prize. But then again, Paul Newman won an honorary Oscar, and then I think the year after won a competitive prize. So there's
Yeah,
precedent for being able to do both. I think it hurt Peter O'Toole when he had his comeback with Venus because he had just won an honorary not long ago. But hey, I think she can still with the right role. And it could be a supporting one, like a juicy villain, you never know.
I'll take it. I'll take
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Yeah. I will just say on the record, I don't think people winning honorary Oscars or receiving honorary Oscars really means anything for their future Oscar success. I just
Mm,
think there's too many factors that just I don't know. I just don't see a huge correlation because, as you said, Paul Newman, we have Spike Lee, we have Henry
sure.
Fonda.
Yeah.
There are plenty of things where they win an honorary and there's just like they put in a great work a few years later, and yeah, we'll
Yeah.
we'll give you a real competitive one.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm just so happy for her ultimately.
I just wish it were on the main telecast, which it won't be.
Well, yes, always
Yeah.
a perpetual complaint of ours. I still don't know why it's not even live streamed,
Yeah, I mean,
Actors
I
Awards.
keep waiting for, categories just to be eliminated, much like they're sort of doing with the Emmys and inexplicably
Yeah.
getting rid of supporting actor and actress in a TV. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
absurd.
Let's get to our last segment where we're going to rate Glenn's performance on a very specific scale. So, would you say, with her performance as Joan Castleman in The Wife, by the way, I just love that name, Joan Castleman, love
Yeah.
to say it. Is it ready for a close up, low Glenergy, close but no cigar, or Glenisant?
She is so ready for her close-up in this. The
Mm-hmm.
film is not the greatest, but it's at least a top 10 Glenn performance, arguably a top five, probably a top five. I think among her
Yeah,
Oscar nominations, it's third behind, obviously, Dangerous Liaisons and Fatal Attraction.
that's
Um,
correct.
but oh, she's magnificent in this. I was so excited for her to just getting all this recognition, which was so long overdue. And while the film itself is such a mixed bag, her performance holds up beautifully. And I wish it were more accessible. I hope it's, streaming somewhere someday. I know Sony Pictures Classics is a little tough with that, but I loved revisiting this performance. I think she's
Mm,
just brilliant.
yeah. It's certainly a ready for her close up for me
Yeah.
as well. Brilliant work, and the way she builds to a crescendo towards the end always kind of takes me aback every time I get to the end and just seeing her fury. There's a lot of power in this performance that I do respond to. And I just wish people would give it a little bit more credit. Give it another rewatch. Don't go into it with the expectation of this being like a something that'll just be undeniable, sort of like obvious acting kind of thing. It's a performance that takes its time and it'll
Mhm.
really ultimately get you by the end. That's what I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
So, with that, Andrew, thank you so
Oh.
much for helping me work through my thoughts yet again on The
Oh.
Wife.
This felt like kind of like a
And
therapy session, which is
it
nice
did. It's
for
always
both of
good to
us.
talk about these things. Yes, exactly. Yes, it's best not to let these things fester for years as they did for Joan Castleman.
Oh, I know. I know.
Yes.
Oh,
I'm glad I didn't throw a book at the screen
yes.
while we were talking. Kept things measured. But yes,
Yes.
thank you so much for this.
Oh, it's always an honor. I think this is maybe my 17th or 18th podcast appearance with you overall. I
Wow.
haven't counted, but that's my recollection. So it's always a true honor and joy and pleasure. So thank you for having me on.
Yes, you're one of the best, and I knew I had to have on one of the true best and one of my favorites to
Thank you.
be on for this one. So, yes, where can people find more of you and your perhaps early Oscar predictions on the
It's
internet?
yep, it's all on the awardsconnection.com, my blog. You can see my predictions dating back to, I think, God, when did I start? 2015, 2016. So there's a lot of stuff on there. I'm also a contributing writer over at Awards Watch. I just did an Emmy article on the all important Best Guest Actor in a Comedy Series race, which is a fun
Hmm.
one. And I'm also on both Twitter and Blue Sky at Awards Connect and Letterbox as well.
Very good. If you haven't followed Andrew yet, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Truly. Yes. Thank you all so much for listening. You can find me at Kevin_Jacobsen on Twitter and Instagram, just Kevin Jacobsen, no underscore on Blue Sky. You can listen to my Oscar themed podcast and the runner up is for coverage of every single Best Actress race, including 2018, where you can hear even more of our thoughts on this crazy category. That's And the Runner Up Is on all platforms. You can go to patreon.com/And the Runner Up Is for early access to these episodes and bonus episodes of And the Runner Up Is, such as my A Woman Robbed series, and you can also read my newsletter every Monday. And to keep up with the world according to Glenn on social, follow the Glenn Pod. Rate, review, and follow on all platforms. And with that, I will bid you all adieu.